Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time and where you're watching me from. I want to welcome you back for the continuation of what we have been discussing in this channel that has to do with the nation of Israel as well as the constitution they received from God, which will determine their fate in future. We have taken time to read the content of that constitution as handed over to them by one of their greatest leader, Moses. Today we want to continue from where we stopped in my last video. In my last video, I showed us the cases that are attached to the violation of the content of that constitution. Today, I want to present us with a serious emphasis on the disaster that will be attached to the violation of that constitution, as well as the blessings that will be attached to the keeping of that very constitution. I'm going to read a few portions of that ancient write of the scriptures where I'm getting all the things I am saying. I will show you something in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter number 11, verses number 26, 27, and 29. Very important to what we are saying. Listen to this. Behold, I set before you this day a blessing and a curse. Verse 27. A blessing if you obey the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you today. Verse 29. And it shall come to pass when the Lord thy God had brought thee in unto the land whither thou goest to possess it, thou shalt put the blessings upon Mount Gerizim and the curse upon Mount Ebal. Today, I want to talk on these mountains that we are set in the land of the promised land. What I mean is this. In that place they are going to possess, which is the promised land, there were two mountains that we are set apart for them that makes a very important impact in their life. Number one is the Mount of Curse, by name Mount Ebal. And number two is Mount Gerizim, which is the Mount of Blessing. If we look at the explanation given to this mountain, the Mount Ebal has the explanation given to it as this: a mount in the promised land on which the Israelites were to put the curse which should fall upon them if they disobeyed the commandments of Jehovah. That is their national constitution. The blessing consequent on obedience was to be similarly localized on Mount Gerizim. Then Ebal and Gerizim are the mounts which form the sides of the fertile valley in which lies Lablus, the ancient Shechem, Ebal on the north and Gerizim on the south, sorry. They are nearly in the center of the country of Samaria, about 800 feet above Nablus in the valley, and they are so near that all the vast body of the people could hear the words read from either mountain. The experiment had repeatedly tried in late years. The modern name of Ebal is Siti Shalamiya, from a Mohammedan female saint whose tomb is standing on the eastern part of the ridge, a little before the highest point is reached. This is the description given to this Mount Ebal. Now, let's look at Mount Gerizim, how it is described here. Mount Gerizim has this description: the mountain in Samaria on which the blessings of Israel were pronounced, in contrast to the curses given on Mount Ebal. You can see that in Deuteronomy 11:29, Deuteronomy 27 verse 12, Joshua chapter 8 verse 33, and Judges chapter number 9 verse 7. History records that after the rebuilding of the temple in the time of Ezra, a Samaritan temple was built on this mountain where they had priests and sacrifices, which was the cause of great animosity between the Jews and the Samaritans. Though this temple was destroyed by Hyrcanus, the Samaritans clung to the mountain as their right place of worship, as the woman of Samaria said to the Lord in John chapter 4 verse 20. The Samaritans still eat the Passover lamb on the mountain. A church was also built there, but now there are only ruins. The mount is called Jebel et-Tor. Its highest point is 2,849 feet above the sea. Permit me to say these few things in today's video. The curse that was meant to come upon them is coming because of their choice to violate their national constitution. Number two, the blessings that are meant to come their way will come as a result of their choice to obey their national constitution. Looking at it from this perspective, permit me to say that these two mountains are very, very important in the life of the Jewish nation. If anything goes wrong or they kept on violating the constitution, somebody will just stand on the Mount Ebal and pronounce curses upon them, and it will work. Then if they are obeying, then the Mount Gerizim is there to release blessings upon them, and it will work. These two mountains plays a very important role on the activity of the Jewish nation as well as their historical antecedent. Now, permit me to say this emphatically, that same is applicable to nations of the world, especially Africa, my motherland. When we choose to violate the constitution of the land, there are curses that naturally follows. When we choose to obey the constitutions of the land, there are not blessings that naturally follows. If we look at what is happening in Africa today, it is quite, striking to note that something has gone wrong as regard to the way we value our constitution as well as keeping to it. Remember, I have number one, Africa as my focus. Number two, the body of Christ as my second focus in what we'll be saying. If we look at what happened in the history of the Jews, which we are about to unfold, how they managed to handle that constitution from time to time, they violated it, what happened? Then when they kept it, what happened? The kings that operated and there was a violation of the national constitution, then the kings that operated, then there is a keeping of the constitution. We are going to start evaluating them from now henceforth. But I want us to note that this issue of curse following a nation because of their choice to violate their national constitution is still real today. Also, the blessings that follows obedience to the national constitution is still real on nations of the world today. Permit me to end this particular video by telling us that most of the African nations are cursed today because of their choice to violate their national constitution. No constitution of any country is bad. After all, most of the constitutions of the world originates from that book of Moses. Even American Constitution, almost 80% of American Constitution is derived from this holy book. And that's why America is prosperous today. What of Britain? Look at their constitution. Most of the international lawyers will attest to it that the constitutions of these nations especially these ones that are successful, it is derived from the content of this constitution of the Jewish nation. Little wonder Israel is highly prosperous today. But we are going to look at the past history of event as it has to do with that Jewish nation, how they handled their constitution and what happened. Then we'll bring it down to Africa and the body of Christ as well. Remember I said, body of Christ has a constitution. Have we been keeping to it? Are we cursed as a body of Christ, or are we blessed as a body of Christ? These are the things that we are going to put to the limelight on the process of bringing this teaching our way. Thank you very much for watching till this time. If these sayings are appealing to you, why not put your hand on your share button and share with those that are on your timeline? Meanwhile, this is just a tip of an iceberg. We are just about to open the bag so that we will see the eyes inside. God bless you richly. Call me Pastor Elisha, the reformer with a difference, the rising voice in Africa.